Hello everyone, it's me Uncle John. Today I am going to read S3 3089 Malaysian Jungle Adventure by Eric Prochaska, level 4-4. Jungle, Mr. Spencer, Martin, Terry, backpack, river, boat, leech, afford, ashamed, bickering, budding, canteen, civilization, destination, disgusting, ecological, guardian, hang in there, implore, jet lag, jetty, pristine, snide, swallow, treat, vampire, wade across, yank off. Welcome to Taman Negara. Imagine taking a class trip to the jungles of Malaysia. Imagine hiking through the jungle and camping there too. Just imagine what you'd do if you saw an elephant or a tiger coming towards you through the jungle. Yes, I know, most schools could never afford to take such an exotic class trip. That's why I'm so fortunate to be a student at the Davis Foundation Ecological Middle School. You see, this unique school trains the future guardians of the environment. We study all about insects, plants, and climates. We learn how to protect the environment, as well as how to restore it to its past purity. So it is no surprise that we would take a class trip to the most natural places on Earth. Each year, the destination is different. This year, we went to Taman Negara. That means National Park in Malay. The language of Malaysia. The park is larger than Rhode Island, my home state. The trip was a chance to see one of the most pristine areas in the world. It was almost a perfect class trip. I say almost because of one thing. Martin Huffnor was one of the students on the trip. Martin and I never got along. I tried to be nice, but his attitude really annoyed me. Martin wanted people to think he was smarter than anyone else, so he often talked about things that no one cared about, and he talked about things he really didn't know about. Of course, I could choose to simply ignore Martin, but I could not ignore the terrible accident that happened while we were in the jungle. But let me tell you the story from the beginning. The teacher who went with us on the trip was Mr. Spencer. He had spent much of his life working in undeveloped countries. He helped the native people improve their living conditions. His specialty was helping them to make environmentally friendly technology. Everyone liked Mr. Spencer. He was the perfect teacher for the trip. When we arrived in Malaysia, it was raining, but the sun came out a few hours later, and the day became very hot. We took a bus from the airport all the way to a small town called Gerontot. We had to spend the night there. That's good because everyone had jet lag and needed some sleep. In the morning, we rose early and took a van to Tambaling. We waited there at the dock for the boat, which would take us up the river into the park. Wow, I can't believe it's so hard just to get to a park, Jules said. Well, it's not like going to a city park, I said. I'm sure it's going to be worth it. It's going to be amazing. After a while, our boats arrived. We had to take two boats because all of our backpacks were too heavy for one boat. To be honest, the boats looked a little dangerous, and I said so to Jules, my best friend. You're right, she said. Look how low they are, see? You can reach your hand out and touch the water. What if an alligator bites your hand off? Or what if it bites the side of the boat? Casey said. Casey was smart, but he seemed more comfortable in a classroom than in the jungle. There aren't any alligators in Malaysia, Martin said. His voice was snide. His voice was always snide. Are you sure? I thought there were, Casey said. Well, if you see one, be sure to let me know. I want to get a picture of the only alligator in Malaysia, Martin said. It really bothered me. The boat ride it took 3 hours. I thought it would be boring, but I really enjoyed looking at the jungle as we went deeper and deeper into its heart. That long boat ride really reminded me just how far away from civilization we were. You could walk for days and days and still be in the jungle. When we arrived at the park, it looked like it would rain again. Jules asked the boat captain, "Does it always rain so much?" "Well, you are in a rainforest," the captain said. "You have to expect a lot of rain. It comes quickly and leaves quickly too. But without the rain, we would not have these beautiful trees or this powerful river." "I guess you're right," Jules said. As we unloaded our backpacks from the boat, I looked up at the trees. They were taller than any trees I had ever seen. They were taller than most of the buildings in my hometown. The trees were so thick and green that they were like a solid wall. Behind them, the jungle was a mystery. Mr. Spencer organized the students into a circle before we headed into the jungle. "Okay, this is our last chance to get any supplies for the next 5 days. Look at your checklist and be sure you have everything you need. There aren't any convenience stores in the jungle." We hiked for nearly 6 hours that first day. It didn't rain while we were hiking, but it had rained before. The jungle trail was wet mud. Our feet sank in at least an inch with every step, which made walking exhausting. We stopped for a short break every hour, and we took a long break for lunch. As we ate lunch, Jules took off her boots. "My feet are so tired," she said. Then she took off her socks too, and everyone was disgusted at what we saw. There were several small black leeches on each of Jules' feet. They were moving their tails around like worms too. "Oh my," Jules said. "That's interesting. I can't even feel them." "That's because leeches have a chemical in their mouths that stops the pain we would feel when they bite us." "Oh, they are friendly little vampires," Peter Spencer said, laughing. Then he added, "I guess everyone has them on their feet by now." He didn't seem alarmed, but the other four students quickly dropped their lunches and took off quickly the boots and socks. There we were, holding our feet out and looking at the disgusting leeches. "How do we get them off?" Casey asked. "You have to put salt on them," Martin said. "Who had salt?" Casey asked. "But I thought using salt to remove a leech was not really a good idea," I said. "I had learned about leeches on TV." "That's right, Terry," Mr. Spencer said. "If you use salt, the leech might release some blood back into your body. This can cause an infection." I loved it when I could prove Martin was wrong. So we all used our fingernails to push the leeches off our feet except for Mr. Spencer. "I am not worried about it," he said. "They will go away when they take enough blood. Anyway, you will just get more leeches soon." A couple of hours after lunch, we had to walk through a river. It was wide, but not deep. Everyone took off their backpacks and held them above their heads. "Shouldn't we take our shoes off too, Mr. Spencer?" Devon asked. "You should leave your shoes on," Mr. Spencer said. "Your feet will be wet, but they are probably wet from the mud anyway. If you take your shoes off, the sharp rocks on the river bottom could cut your feet." Only one by one we stepped into the river. We probably looked like a line of ants carrying those bags in single file that way. Once we got across the river, we were almost ready to stop for the day. That's a good thing too. We were really tired. How much longer do we have to hike today? Devin asked. Just a little more, gang. According to the map, we will be camping less than 2 kilometers from here. Well, I just hope we don't cross any more rivers. The water was cold, Jules said. Really? I thought you'd all enjoy some cool water after such a long hike. How can we enjoy when we have to carry our bags over our heads? Now my arms hurt too, Devon said. Just keep going a bit longer. Once we get to the hide, we can relax for a little while, Mr. Spencer said. A hide is a shelter where hikers can camp. They call it a hide because the shelter hides you from animals. If you're lucky, animals will come close to the hide and you can watch them secretly. I was hoping to see an elephant or something else big. All I had seen all day were insects and a few monkeys. But the monkeys were too high in the trees to see them all. Do you think we will see any tigers tonight? Jules asked. Before I could answer, Martin interrupted. Don't be silly. There aren't any tigers around here. Oh, who asked you? I said. You didn't know a tiger if it bit you. Terry, Martin, stop your fighting. Stop, Mr. Spencer said. There's still work to do. You two go and get some water. We need to boil it and fill in our canteens for tomorrow. Oh, yes, sir, we said in unison. I couldn't believe I had to spend my evening walking next to Martin. The same river we had crossed earlier ran nearby the hide, so we went there to get the water. Hey, the river isn't as wide here, I said. Maybe we can cross it here in the morning. Then we can save some time. That's not a good idea, Martin said. I thought you were just trying to annoy me. Why not? Well, think about it. If it's the same river, so it has the same amount of water. If the river isn't as wide, it must be deeper. It's probably too deep to walk across. Hey, I said, then maybe it's deep enough to swim here. I immediately took off my boots and shirt. But Martin just stood there. I hope you're a really good swimmer, he said, but he didn't sound like he'd really care. He was just trying to be smart again. He really bothered me. I think the water is moving awfully fast, he said, but I wasn't going to listen to him. I stepped into the river until the water was at my waist. It really was deeper, so I dove ahead to swim. The water was really cold, and it was moving a little fast, I guess. My body was being carried down the river, so I started to swim up river back toward Martin, but it was no use, no matter how fast I swam. The river was faster. I was moving so fast that I could barely hear as Martin yelled, Mr. Spencer, come quick. Teddy is drowning. He was right. I was drowning. The fighting against the river took so much of my strength that I could barely keep my head above water. I tried to breathe, but I swallowed dirty river water. Suddenly I was more scared than I had ever been before. I knew I was going to die. Just then I felt something. Is it a fish? A tree branch? No, it was a hand. Someone was grabbing my arm. Then I could hear a voice. It said, I've got you. I've got you. Oh, no. It was Martin's voice. Martin, the person I hated the most in the world, was saving my life. He pulled me closer to his body, and I could feel him pulling me toward the shore. When we were in shallow water, I stood up and coughed the water out of my lungs. Mr. Spencer was swimming to us, but he was too far away. If Martin didn't save me, I'm sure I would have died. Where did you learn to swim like that? I asked. At home. My family has an Olympic swimming pool in the basement. I was a junior lifeguard last summer, too. Oh, I said. Mr. Spencer was running through the shallow water now. Boys, are you all right? Oh, we are okay, I said. I wasn't hurt, just ashamed. What were you thinking? Mr. Spencer said. This isn't a school playground. This is a real jungle. You have to be careful. Remember? I know. I'm sorry, Mr. Spencer. I'll never do that again. You better not. You're just lucky you had a friend there to save you, Mr. Spencer said. A friend, Martin. Well, it couldn't be worse than drowning, I guess. Come on, boys. We have to hike back to the hide. Casey should have a fire started by now. We can dry off before dinner. The heat of the day was gone, and so was some of my dislike of Martin. He jumped in the river to save my life, and I never even treated him nicely, so he can't be as bad as I had thought. Yeah, maybe we could be friends. The end.